Yeah, good evening, Bev. Essentially, Mike Pence will launch his presidential campaign officially tomorrow or Wednesday in the United States. He's going to be doing an event in Iowa, and then, of course, we'll be doing a CNN Republican town hall. So what we saw on Monday in the U.S. was really just the official paperwork being filed, something we've seen from Trump, Ron DeSantis, and some of the other candidates. It's sort of a formality before you jump into the race.
Yeah. How do you think he's going to position himself through his launch and then whatever he does compared to his former boss, Trump?
It's a really good question because I think you're going to see Mike Pence wanting to run on the accomplishments of the Trump administration because he was #2 in command of the Trump administration. The issue of that is that he's competing against the #1 in command of the Trump administration, former President Trump. So, he's going to be talking about very similar policies that President Trump is talking about and campaigning on. That being said, though, I think Mike Pence does have room to differentiate himself from the former president. And a lot of that has to do with social and cultural issues here in the United States. We've seen President Trump take a conservative stance on these issues, absolutely. But Mike Pence is known for just being more socially and politically and religiously conservative than Donald Trump on various issues. And that matters in a state like Iowa because we know that conservative evangelical Christians who make up a big part of the caucus-going electorate in Iowa and really a part of the GOP primary electorate as a whole nationally are very important to this constituency. Mike Pence is an evangelical himself, so he will certainly make a play for that part of the party. That being said, though, Donald Trump is very popular among cultural conservatives and evangelicals, so it's going to be an uphill climb for Pence.
Yeah. What impact do you think his entry is going to have on what is really quite a wide field?
It's a good question. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu announced yesterday that he would not be running for president in the GOP primary and said, essentially, the more people that get in, the more likely that plays into Trump's hands. And there's a lot of other political observers and practitioners who would agree with that. That's something that happened in 2015 and 2016 when we saw a very broad Republican primary field, and Donald Trump essentially just won a plurality of the vote, and that gave him the nomination. So there's that question, but it'll be interesting to see how he is able to campaign on a lot of the so-called America First policies we hear the former president talking about, while at the same time differentiating himself.
Yeah. DeSantis, meantime, appears to be closing the gap on Trump. Many had thought Trump was way in front and that there wasn't much chance. Give us the latest statistics that are coming through.
Yeah, so most polling does still show President Trump very much the front runner. However, there was an internal poll that was released yesterday by a pro-DeSantis super PAC that showed the gap narrowing from mid-May to the end of May when Ron DeSantis announced. So I think when you look at these individual state polls where Ron DeSantis is really starting to expand his political footprint, get more face time with voters, build his name ID, you're going to see that gap increase, that gap close, excuse me. And you could also see other candidates in the race gain traction. But right now, this is clearly, at this moment, a two-man race between Trump and DeSantis. I mean, the two men have really been going at it over the past 2 weeks, attacking each other, and it shows that that's how they view each other. My question is, when you look at candidates like Mike Pence or Nikki Haley, for example, where are they looking? I think they're looking at Ron DeSantis, and it's a bit of a competition for #2, so they can get their chance to take on Trump.
Yeah, interesting. Meantime, Trump's legal woes are mounting up. There's suggestions that further legal action is imminent, particularly regarding the classified material that he took from the White House. That ultimately could also impact how this plays out.
It could potentially. From what we've seen when it comes to these legal questions Donald Trump is facing in the Republican primary, a lot of his opponents and rivals aren't attacking him over this. In fact, they're essentially defending him in many cases. Like when we saw he was indicted in New York City in that case, we saw a lot of these candidates defend him. So they know, these candidates know how much of a hold he has on the GOP primary base. So they're not going to necessarily use this against him. Now, in a general election, if Trump is elected, is made the Republican nominee, I could see that playing a bigger role.
Yeah. So many factors at play, but as you say, he still is out there in the front. Good to talk, Julia. Thanks so much.
Thank you.